The first time Seraphine descended from the storm-choked mountains, she came not as a conqueror but as a beggar. Her scales, once brilliant as molten copper, had dulled to the color of ash. Her wings trembled with exhaustion as she landed in the clearing outside the agricultural settlement of New Haven, sending dust and dead leaves spiraling into the air. The settlers scattered like frightened rabbits, all except one. Eli Ward stood his ground in the middle of his wheat field, a pitchfork gripped in calloused hands. He was young, barely 20 standard years, with sun-darkened skin and eyes that held more curiosity than fear. He'd heard the stories of dragons, ancient beings who'd ruled the skies before humanity reached the stars. But he'd never seen one look so desperate. Seraphine's massive head lowered until her golden eyes met his. When she spoke, her voice rumbled like distant thunder, but there was a tremor in it that no amount of draconic pride could hide. "Please," she said, and the words seemed to cost her everything. "My daughter starves." Eli's grip on the pitchfork loosened. Behind the dragon's towering form, he could see a smaller shape huddled in the shadows. A hatchling no larger than a horse, ribs visible through translucent scales, whimpering softly. "The hunting grounds are poisoned," Seraphine continued, her voice cracking. "The sky beasts that once filled the upper atmosphere are gone. Industrial runoff from the mining colonies killed them all. I have searched for weeks, but there is nothing. Nothing but your fields." The other settlers had begun to emerge from their homes, weapons in hand. Eli heard Mayor Hutchins shouting orders to form a perimeter. But the young farmer didn't move. He studied the ancient creature before him, saw past the fangs and claws to the desperation of a mother watching her child waste away. "How much does she need?" Eli asked quietly. Seraphine blinked as if she hadn't expected the question. "The grain stores. Perhaps half. I would hunt to repay you, but there is nothing left to hunt." "Half our winter stores," someone muttered behind Eli. "She's asking us to starve." But Eli was already calculating. The harvest had been good, better than good. They had surplus enough to trade with 3 other settlements. If they rationed carefully, took only what they needed rather than what they wanted. "Wait here," Eli said. He turned and walked toward the storage silos, ignoring the protests erupting around him. Mayor Hutchins grabbed his arm. "Ward, are you insane? That thing could incinerate us all." "She could have already," Eli replied, pulling free. "But she didn't," she asked. He began hauling bags of processed grain to the clearing, his back straining under the weight. 1 bag, 2, 5, 10. The other settlers watched in stunned silence as the young farmer made trip after trip, building a small mountain of food before the dragon. Seraphine didn't move. She simply stared, her expression unreadable. When Eli finished, he was drenched in sweat. He gestured to the pile. "It's not half. It's about 1/3. But it should be enough for a few weeks. Maybe a month if you're careful." The dragon's eyes widened. I have nothing to offer in return." "Then consider it a loan," Eli said, surprising himself with his own words. "When things get better, when the ecosystem recovers, you can repay us. But right now your daughter needs to eat." Seraphine called the hatchling forward with a low, melodic trill. The young dragon stumbled on weak legs, but when she reached the grain, she began to feed with desperate hunger. Seraphine watched her child eat, and when she turned back to Eli, there were tears shimmering in her ancient eyes. "Why?" she whispered. "You're kind. You have every reason to hate us. We burned your first colonies when you arrived. We killed hundreds before the treaties were signed." Eli shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "My grandfather used to say that the measure of a civilization isn't in how it treats its equals, but in how it treats those who have nothing left to offer." He looked at the hatchling, now eating more slowly, savoring each mouthful. "Besides, she's just a kid, and kids shouldn't suffer for the sins of their ancestors." Over the following weeks, Seraphine returned twice more. Each time, Eli met her with more grain, and each time the hatchling looked stronger. On the 4th visit, something remarkable happened. Seraphine arrived carrying a massive crystalline structure in her claws, a dragon's hoard stone pulsing with stored energy. She placed it before Eli with reverence. "This is worth more than all the grain in your settlement," she said. "It can power your entire colony for a century. But more than that." She paused, her voice softening. "I want to help rebuild what my kind destroyed. The sky beasts, I know where their breeding grounds once were. With time and protection, they can return. I will guard those places, and I will tell other dragons of the human who showed mercy when we had nothing." Eli stared at the glowing stone, then at the dragon. "You didn't have to." "Yes," Seraphine interrupted. "I did. Because you showed me that humanity is not defined by its capacity for destruction, but by its capacity for compassion. That is a power greater than any weapon." As she spread her wings to depart, her daughter, now strong and healthy, chirped happily and nuzzled against Eli's hand before bounding after her mother. Mayor Hutchins approached, eyeing the hoard stone with barely concealed awe. "You realize what you've done, Ward? You've just secured our colony's future." Eli smiled, watching the dragons disappear into the clouds. "No, sir. I think I did something better. I made a friend. In the years that followed, the story of Eli Ward and Seraphine would spread across human space. A reminder that sometimes the most alien thing in the universe wasn't the creatures humanity encountered, but humanity's own capacity for kindness in the face of ancient grudges, and in a galaxy often defined by conflict that made all the difference. The dragons returned to the skies, the ecosystems healed, and in a small farming settlement called New Haven, a young man continued to tend his fields, knowing that somewhere above the clouds, a mother and daughter flew free, because one human chose mercy over fear, compassion over revenge. That, in the end, was the most human thing of all.